Welcome, my rising, redeemed, relentless warriors. I'm Icarus, and this is the After the Fall show, the place where lives are shared, falls are felt, and rebirth is forged in fire. And today we're going to be talking about bullying, sexuality, and the consequences of how life moves on afterwards. And I'm honoured to have Dom, who I actually have worked with previously, who volunteered to come onto the show today. So I am going to say up front, I am so grateful because it's so nice to have someone who isn't hiding from the embarrassment potentially of knowing the presenter, the host, before the show, and they still will come on and share a life experience to help the world. So Dom, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Listen, because I know you, and obviously this is one of those shows where I don't need to do introductions to get us warmed up and things. Let's just jump straight into it. So the thing I'm really keen to know about you, Dom, especially having known you through work, is where did your journey begin? Can you take us back to the sort of day one and introduce the world to who you were?
So a young Dom was born, and from quite a young age, I was bullied for pretty much anything. I think my mum's first recollection of me being bullied was actually at nursery, where some kid just nicked my teddy, and it absolutely made me livid. And I think I might have pushed the guy or punched him, but that's beside the point. And I think the bullying, it just kept going. Like, it didn't stop during primary school. I didn't have any friends, so the bullying kind of just progressed. And then the bullying went straight into secondary school, where 3 years I was at private school. So the bullying obviously in my experience, I feel like the bullying was more pressured at private school than it was when I went to a more normal school. And also at that time, I started to feel like whether I wasn't straight, but I didn't really understand it. So I kind of just brushed it off. But at that time of me being bullied, it just kept going. So I didn't feel happy at that school anymore. The school was in Henley. So I said to my mum and dad, I said, I want to move schools. And I was looking at Bicton College, which I have no idea what it is. I think it's maybe Taunton. And I was also looking at Ivy Bridge College, mainly because I like to look at their rugby program. And so my mum and dad, they spoke about it, and they also weren't too happy with living in the area anymore. They'd lived there for like 50 years, and they decided they also wanted to change. So we moved down to sunny old Devon and moved me into a new school. Someone that, again, the bullying continued. Didn't help that on the first day I came in looking like I've just come from private school by wearing a suit and very pointy shoes, whereas the school dress code was just trousers and a polo shirt, and that was it, and you could wear what you want and stuff. But the school was a complete culture change for me, but it also helped me learn more about myself, which was good and bad. But the bullying, it kept on going. So I was like, Dad, what do I do about this bullying? And he says, well, the teachers aren't doing anything, so you've just got to hit them, because they're going to likely hit you. So you've just got to hit them first, and you've got to hit them harder.
Prison
and
rules.
the school kind of dealt with that in a way where they were just like, just you've got to deal with it. They didn't want to take responsibility for their students, which sounds pretty crazy for a school. It is what it is. College moves on, the bullying kind of stops, but the realization of I still don't have many friends. I'm trying to maybe act like a bit of a dick to get friends, but also I'm still a little bit confused in my sexuality. I'm learning more about it, and I feel like, maybe I am gay, or maybe I'm bi, or what do these terms mean? Why are there labels for people that I like and that I'm attracted to? I've always found it really bizarre. And then I think at some point during college, I was like, oh, maybe, maybe I am bi, but I don't want to say anything, because obviously that pressure of not wanting to tell people because of the worry that you might lose people, like lose friends and lose family. Because I think growing up, like, my family would be like, when you get a girlfriend and when you get married and have a wife and you have kids, that's the social norm. So I never really wanted to talk about the topic of potentially being not straight and being with a woman. So that moved on. But when I left college, and even though I made a couple of friends actually, but when I left college, it was then the pressure of it was weird. The pressure of not being bullied anymore for something that becomes so normal for me, felt weird. But the pressure of also not understanding whether I was bi or gay, but also the pressure then of wanting to make sure that I fitted with the ideologies that my family wanted me to be, I guess, of having a wife and having kids and stuff. So yeah, I think, it drove a lot of pressure, probably upwards of 20, upwards of the age of 23. It's only 3 years ago, where there was just so much pressure. And the way I dealt with the pressure when I left college was to build businesses and work, because for me, which sounds really weird, that was a really big out for me, was just to focus on something, make money from it, and make it my own. But then obviously you grow a business, the business gets bigger, you get then pressure from a business. So then I'm having pressure from my past of being bullied, pressure of being not too sure of who I am, pressure of my friends and my family not knowing who I am, and then the pressure of work. And it all kind of just got too much, and I just wanted just to end it all. So I attempted to kill myself by drowning, but it didn't work. It just didn't work. So a few months go by, more pressure builds up, and I try to hang myself again. It just didn't work. So, and at that point, I didn't know what to do. I think I briefly made a comment to my sister when we were walking to like the beach, and then she didn't feel comfortable with what I told her, so she told my mum. And then my mum and my dad sat me down. This was at age 20, maybe even 22, and said, I think it's maybe time now you talk to us about how you're feeling. And me talking to them released a lot of pressure. Not all the pressure. And I would still say I carry some weight,
Yeah.
but for the most part, the weight has been balanced by me talking to people.
Yeah.
Friends, family, strangers, people online, people on the streets, rando cashiers when you're paying for your food shopping, somehow gets onto that conversation. But also, I think my current relationship, I say current, like I'm going to move on, my relationship with Corey, my fiance, it's helped me become more comfortable with who I am as a person, but also helped me go through my past better. Whereas before, I would happily just pull it all in a box and throw it to the side, and it would weigh me down, but I wouldn't open it. Whereas Corey helped open the box to help me go through it. So yeah, that's where I am.
School, my time at school was awful. I always refer to it as a prison, because it is the toughest in the playground, the most popular and things. And if they choose to make your life a nightmare, mine was dyslexia, and being small, you just get targeted for it. And, you have to use your skills you're taught to survive. So it's either fight, it's, perform, or in my case, it was humor, which then didn't make me feel any better.
Yeah.
But at home, my parents taught me to speak because I was left behind. So I would always just let it out. And, it wouldn't help necessarily, but you'd feel better at home. But what I hear in your journey there is that you had the educational setting and younger, and then the change. And you sound like you went through a period when you probably, on the journey there, probably hoped for different. And then you landed into similar or different, but same. But it sounds like the sexuality, the kind of, not the confusion, but the confusion of how the world saw it versus your expectation of how the two go together. And then parents, that's a difficult thing, isn't it? There's not a logical thing when you're a younger person just to put the two together. So that makes a lot of sense. With the conversation with your parents, when you started to let things out to them, how did that change how your relationship with your parents went? And then also how you felt about yourself, having that connection with them and understanding or disagreements, but still spoken about. Did it change things?
I think there were separate conversations before the time where I mentioned to my sister that I tried to kill myself. I think it was back in 2018. I initially came out to my mum, but she didn't fully accept who I was, and she kind of said, "Oh, is it a joke?" And that obviously made me feel like, "Oh, crap," no, I'm not. It's just a joke. Haha. And we've moved on with our lives. And then late 2018, I then came out to we're talking like 7 months later. I then came out to my dad. And he accepted me straight away, which was kind of the complete opposite, because I always say that your mum accepts you more than your dad. Because your dad expects you to be the man of the house who is straight and stuff like that. Whereas it was the complete opposite. Like, I came out to my nan and she accepts it. She's 92, like she lived during the war. And then I came out to my mum again during a rugby match at Chiefs when they were doing a Rainbow Laces campaign. And then she kind of accepted it. And I feel like she's still not 100% in certain ways, but I feel like she's accepted as who I am. And then fast forward 3 years, 3 years. The pressure of the suicide talk. I feel like that conversation, which went through the past in different factors and help opening up with that, it just released a lot of pressure regarding the weight that I've always carried because I got to share that weight with other people, and I didn't feel like because I think for so long I felt like the pressure that I couldn't tell people because one, I didn't want to worry them. I didn't want to concern them of what I was going through because my worry is that, well, what if it affects them same way it affects me? So I just didn't tell them. But then obviously when I did tell them, I had a conversation. I actually found out that my sisters go through similar things
Yeah.
with depression. I mean, I'm not going to tell their story. That's not my
No, no.
place to say. But
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, similar with a lot of my sisters, they struggle with things, and I just thought that they were perfect for a
Yeah.
long time.
I think it's a universal thing. And this is one of the reasons why I hope that people who are listening to this show out there, understand through conversations like this and honesty like this is that, I in my own journey, I nearly jumped in front of a train at 6:30 in the morning because I had a momentary blip of
Mm,
exhaustion when a train came past
yeah,
and I stepped back and I phoned my wife and just said, I get it now. She said, get what? Like I was a
yeah,
maniac. And I think she thought I was joking. And I just said, sit down. And I sat down like virtually with her. And I said, I nearly jumped, but I caught myself. And
yeah,
there are moments I think in everyone's life where you have I mean, we're a flux, aren't we, constantly? But with things like pressure, like you say, the work thing you were doing, I'm guilty of this myself with burnout, where you put yourself into something you can control, something you can be proud of, something you can identify in to cope. And every single person does it. Some people do it with social media, some with food, everyone has a thing. But I don't think there's a single person on this planet who can ever say that, do you know what, I've never had that, because they may just not realize because it's become part of who they are and how they cope. So I don't think it's unique. Is there anything you can share with people with before you attempted either time to do something, kind of
yeah.
how you felt in a way, in as much as, is there something there where, on reflection, you said, do you know what, given it was going to get to that point, I should have just said something? Because as we grow older, hindsight's great, isn't it? We can
Mm,
reflect on things. Is there any sort of takeaways from that where if people are listening and life is really hard and the
mm.
voices are talking away, that you might go, think about this?
I think me wanting to kill myself didn't come instantly in a way that, I would self-harm. I wouldn't slash my wrists because I'd scared of blood. For me, I always wanted to, like, I'd always smash my head against a door or hit myself in the head with my fist. And I always thought, why don't I just talk to someone? But my worry was always, what's the consequences of talking to someone? I think there was one moment before my parents and my family found out where I actually talked to an ex-boyfriend about what I was going through. I think it was my first boyfriend. It was in Plymouth in 2020 during lockdown when I shouldn't have been going out of the lockdown. I think most people were. God, that was a forever. I would go on, I'd wake up because I'd have like sleep deprivation problems, and I'd wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and I'd go for a walk in Plymouth in the dark, no one else there. I'd have my headphones in and I'd do these walks every day. And then there was one time where he said, can I come for that walk? And I was like, okay, sure. And he was like, why do you go on these walks? And I said, well, I feel like the world is kind of like pressuring me in different ways. And I feel like I'm being like crushed inside. So for me, these walks help relax me.
Decompression, isn't it?
Yeah. And I feel like that talk with him made me feel a lot more comfortable. I mean, I didn't stay with him, but
It's an
but
honest answer, isn't it? Because no matter what the person's reason were, if there was interest or anything, someone cared enough to ask, and that's often the hook,
yeah,
isn't it? When you're scared to say, sometimes someone can
I
sense.
think I think you know a lot of people that you don't expect to care often do care. And I feel like society as a whole is doing a lot better with mates checking up on mates, or even just strangers checking up on strangers. Even at work, sometimes stuff like, are you okay? How are you feeling? Stuff like that. It's a lot better than it used to be. It's even better than just a few years ago.
Yeah.
So I think that commitment to be socially aware of how people are feeling is a lot better than it used to be. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
What about afterwards then? So if we kind of you've gone through this experience, you've had these moments where life, has been such a pressure pot that you've kind of felt like there's no alternative. Right? Whether there's not. Your mind just got to a point of like sheer exhaustion. You then talk to people. What then happened? I mean, if I look at the arc of life, I always say people go through this sort of thing where we have this final fall, and there's a moment where we stop just going back like the moth to the light to bang our head again.
Yeah.
Where you go,
Yeah.
actually, there's a sun out there, or a moon. Let's fly towards that instead. That looks much better and sustained. So when was that point you think that actually there's one day you woke up and it was just different, and you just chose to do something else?
It was actually when we came back from the beach, and I had started to talk with other people in the family about how I'd been feeling and what I'm still feeling and stuff like that. It was kind of from that point was thinking, I'm not alone. Other people want to experiencing it, but also other people understand what I'm going through. But I would say in terms of the steps after, I feel like I would say currently I'm in a position where I feel comfortable and I feel happy, and that's taken a long time to get here. So I would say after talking to someone, it wasn't instant. It took still many, many years. That took, the early parts of mine and Corey's relationship, he knew that I was still a little bit on the darker side, where I would be a bit more, I wouldn't feel like killing myself, but I also would have the feeling of, what's the point
Yeah,
of
the heavy moments.
doing this and doing that? I would never want to go so drastic. Actually, there is one point, I think it was in 2023 or maybe 2022, where I think I had an issue with my family, and I moved in with Corey's parents, and the pressure of losing the people that I talked to just got too much. And I think I then called the Samaritans. I didn't I didn't forget, well, I did forget the memory, but I didn't choose to forget. I think I happily forgot the memory. But, it just, for me, it just took time to rebuild who I was, but also to not just rebuild, but also build a new things, thinking, okay, people don't care about my sexuality. That's great. So how can I feel comfortable? What can I do to feel comfortable? What can I do to mediate if I have a problem thinking, oh, this is too much? What am I going to do to calm me down?
Was there a level of self-acceptance there? So if you knew the world would accept it, was there a bit where you'd held it for so long and now you had to figure out, well, do I accept it? And who am I now? What does this
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. And that was more like I felt lost, which is not something I felt for 4 or 5 years, because I'd left college, I'd run businesses, and I felt comfortable. I would go to the gym. I'd had a routine of grinding myself at the gym to build something that was my own, to then build something in an area of myself that I didn't know how to navigate. And it made me, I was happy, but I was still confused and like, what do I do? Yeah.
I was going to say it's interesting because a lot of people say about the fact that things like exercise and things becomes part of the identity. I mean, I did that myself, but there's a difference, isn't there, between the crutch and the healing? So you can find the crutch
Yeah.
and you can walk for miles, but it doesn't mean that you can drop them and then say, right, okay, so who am I now? Which it sounds like
Yeah.
that's the bit you had to do. Back at school, I think you started at the start of the conversation, you said that you obviously didn't have many friends and things, and then you were getting targeting and stuff, and you went through these changes. I mean, now the Dom that I know plays rugby, and you've got a community. You got tribe,
Yeah.
you've got rugby, you've got the tribe of sexuality, right? That's another community. There's a whole pride-esque nature to this. So, do you feel that with the communities you've made around you, was that some of that in place before you kind of really struggled, or has that built and brought you strength afterwards?
Two things. I think I found a friend in 2018 who's probably my best friend. Probably before I started to think of, well, I've always had kind of suicidal thoughts even when I was at school, but like I never wanted to actually do anything. But I found that friend during that period, um, and he helped me with certain things. Like there was a point where I thought about killing myself. I thought about driving to a bridge. Instead, I called him, and we met for a pint at 1 a.m. At like a random pub in Newton. It was a grotty pub.
I was going to say,
That's
where do you
Newton
get
for
a pint
you.
at 1 a.m.? Yeah.
They was, I think they were open because the tradies were there late. And because it's a local pub, they tend to be open for tradies. So,
Yeah.
that was there. Then I was wanting to find communities that were more aligned with my sexuality, because all of my friends up to that point were straight, and probably up until 2022 they were straight, which I don't have an issue with at all. People often consider me as straight acting, and that I'm not actually gay. I'm just straight, because I'm not camp at all. I don't like gay things. I don't know, I like MMA and stuff like that. But then I wanted to join a community, so I went and did a trial shift at West Country Wasps, which is an IGR team. IGR is International Gay Rugby. This was in 2021. Unfortunately, at that point, there were some dodgy players. The club was in a completely different state than it is now. And that guy that I met with, we went on a date, but he tried to sexually abuse me in the car. And it wasn't until a car meets, so like this collection of cars, and I like put my hand out the window, so go like that, and they came over and said, "Oh, mate, you right?" And I was like, "Oh no, I don't feel comfortable. Is there a chance that maybe you can
Yeah.
just like
Get me
stay
out of it.
here?"
Yeah.
Um, and they helped me get me home and stuff, and the guy left, and then he like hold a load of abuse on me on like Instagram, stuff like that. So I kind of left that community thinking, shit, this just I is this what I want? Is this a safe
Yeah.
space? And I wasn't too sure. Um,
But you
so I
can
left it.
have a
I
culture and a
left it.
community, but you can't stop the people, can you? It's a person versus the people.
Yeah, yeah. And then in 2023, so this was after my parents we had this like like suicide talk and stuff like that. I went and rejoined Wasps, but in a completely different entity. Because that guy had been like banned from the club, like the police were involved and stuff like that. And his friends had like gone to another club because they weren't welcomed. So Wasps was kind of at this point where like 3 players. And I joined as a social media marketer, a web developer, marketing strategist, but also a player
I was just saying,
when they had
yeah.
3 players.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was one of the OG to help rebuild the club, and I played with them for I think it was another year. When I played against like Cardiff and then Bristol, and made a load of mates. Then I got injured, um, which was a really weird thing because I hadn't been injured in a game of rugby for like over 10 years, but I still went to the games, and like I still had that friend group, so I still felt comfortable to talk to people. And then up until this year, I think it was this year, I rejoined Wasps again. And a lot of the players that were playing in 2023 were still there. So for me, I still had the same community, but if anything, the community got a bit younger, so a bit more at my age range, which was really nice. So I could actually have like younger gay friends, which has felt really nice actually. Like a few of them live up the road from me and Corey, and they came down last night. We had a few drinks and stuff, and that has made me feel probably a lot more comfortable than I thought anything ever has with friends, really. Like my best friend Mark, who's a straight friend from 2018, like he's my bestie, and Kieran Plymouth, he's straight as well. But having gay friends understand what gay people can go through is really nice. It's so nice and calming. And hey, look, we get to play rugby and get injured and win finals.
Yeah.
It's not all bad. So
No, that's good.
yeah.
I mean, would you, if you've got anyone listening now who is in the early part of their own journey, would you recommend, if they're trying to get to
Yeah.
that point of honesty with themselves and they're thinking, I'm just going to go to a club or go to a sport if it's for gayness, for example, you've been gay, for example, go there. Would you recommend them doing that first before speaking to people in confidence about it to kind of get the identity, or do you think splitting the identity might make it more difficult because then they're living two lives? I mean, is there any advice, I guess, you could give to people based on what you've kind of experienced and learned?
To be honest, no, because I think everyone has their own journey, especially with the likes of sexuality. Everyone has their own journey. You could say to someone, oh, maybe go and talk to someone, or maybe go and join a club, but some people might not want to. To be honest, before I met Corey, apart from that blip in 2021, would I have gone and joined Wasps? Probably not. I had two friends at that point. I didn't drink. I didn't go out to party. I didn't do any of that stuff. For me, it was a multi-year stage of progress with Corey that made me feel comfortable going to talk to people at Wasps and joining a club. So I feel like everyone has their own journey and I can't comment on what someone else should do. But at the same time, there is lots of groups, clubs, people out there that will happily talk to you. I mean, I went to Exeter Pride recently. There was like, gosh, 15, 20,000 people there. And so many different clubs, like so many different people in all facets, and a lot more than it was years ago. So I feel like it's a lot easier to talk to people now. But again, people have their own journey, and it might be really easy for people to say, "Oh, I'm gay," or it might take them multi years, like me. But then also, it's not just bi or gay anymore. There's a lot of things to it, and so it's probably maybe quite overwhelming for people, or in some cases not. So yeah.
Well, I think it's, again, for people listening, I guess there's a few things that hearing your story, so I take away. And actually, one of the things was the guy in the car, needing to get help as well, because this is something, you're dipping a toe into something, you'll be beginning to experience something, and that first experience is that. I mean, you can reflect back to what you hear sometimes from women, for example, when they say, "Oh, I went on a date with this guy and this happened and it was forceful," and it can happen to anybody, can't it? So you have to, I guess people need to protect themselves. Now, you might think you're a big burly guy. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have a shitty time when something happens that you're not expecting. So there's a good message there for people to always, make sure you're safe in these things. And what the definition of safe is everyone's, again, no interpretation, isn't it, for it? But luckily, people there. I guess the other thing is that you said something which I have a bit of a passion for, which is, one of them, you were describing people you talked to about your journey. You randomly said people on a checkout, cashier, right? There's something funny about it, isn't there? Because obviously with the rise of automation, the rise of getting rid of these things, some of the most simple mental support of having a conversation with an abject stranger as you exchange cash, and they might just say, "What's that bracelet about?" But it might open a doorway to a complete change in your life.
Yeah.
It's sad that society is changing that way, isn't it? Because it sounds like you personally have had moments where you've had meaningful conversations that have actually helped.
Yeah. I feel like those opportunities are still, I mean, in Devon and Cornwall, I think it's still quite easily to be found. There's not so many robots being replaced yet, but I think it's easier to have a conversation with a stranger than it is with someone you love, because it's very likely you will never talk to that person again. And to be honest, it's not like I would go into a conversation with someone and be like, "Hi, yes, no, I feel suicidal and I'm gay, or bi." Even it's just things get brought up, like small things like, "Oh, what's that Wasp shirt you're wearing? What's it for? Who's the team?"
Yeah.
Or "Are you looking a bit down? Is everything okay?" You get some random combos with strangers sometimes, and sometimes the conversations with strangers are the best ones you'll have. So
Yeah. Having worked in senior care, some of the lifelines to some of those people is the buying the bread on a Tuesday, and it might be the only conversation they have in the week, but it's the one that mentally keeps them going. So these small exchanges and small interactions, we should almost make the reason we go and have them, shouldn't we? It's about wellness.
yeah.
I guess my closing question for you would be this then, is, as I say in every episode, being Icarus, I always say that we have wings on our back, and the journey we go on, no matter what it is, we'll tatter our wings because we all hit the floor. We all have that moment when something needs to change, which is why I decided to do this show, and for yourself, why it's fascinating and great to have you to come on and share your journey. When we get back up, I always say that for Icarus, the sun burnt his wings. So I always say that they're the lessons that we're learning, right? It's the thing that could kill us. Is the thing that can make us grow as well as we learn. So if you were going to pluck a feather now, right, you've got this bright flaming feather, and you could write on it, and you could hand it to someone across the void of the internet that you can't see to help them on their journey, right? No matter what stage they're at, right? No matter what it is, no matter what the message is, what would you write on it from your journey that you think somebody else could either learn from, need to hear, anything?
I think it's okay to talk. I think for me, out of everything, I think talking is the one thing that has made me feel maybe not comfortable, but at the start, it was uncomfortable talking to people, but it released a lot of pressure. And that pressure is often what is the building factor for what people wanting to end their life for, is because of them feeling like they're being pressured and crushed and stuff. And talking with people is sharing that weight. And, like I said, you don't have to talk with people you love. You don't have to talk with a cashier. Luckily, there's support lines now online. They're not seeing your face. They don't record customer data for the most part. They're just there to talk to you at the end of the day. And that one conversation with the Samaritans was kind of the last interaction I've had with me wanting to kill myself, because it made me feel like, you know what, life isn't actually that bad. I'm not as bad as I think I am. Life is actually okay. And so I think if I was to talk to someone and they would ask my advice, I would be like, just talk, just speak to anyone. Obviously in your own time, in your own space, wherever you feel comfortable. But talking is probably the best way for you to release pressure.
And thank you, Dom. And to everyone who's listening in now, whether you're on the any kind of journey or not, whether things resonate here or you're just listening in to hear an experience of another life, always remember some of the things that Dom has shared with you. And that is that going through school is hard, I think, for everybody. Whether you're trying to overachieve, whether you're trying to fit in, it's not always easy. And I think as a parent myself, I try and tell my kids that. I say it's a bit fucked up sometimes you go to school, son. Don't try so hard sometimes when you're feeling really tired. To my daughter, because these different experiences make or break the later parts of your life. Because they shape how you interact. The second thing for me is that I think if you're going through any kind of confusion around where you fit in society, where you fit in the world, whether that be sexuality, whether it be anything, it is important to speak, because a closed mouth and a stressed mind eventually will just explode. You can only hold the pressure pot of yourself for a certain amount of time, and no one's going to get sad at you for speaking. And actually, lots of people who I've spoke to in my own journey, a few of them always said to me, I don't want to upset my family. And the irony is there's nothing more upsetting for a family than the day you're not there. And I think that one of the things is for people to process that, because people love you. They say unconditionally. There are conditions, but those conditions wash away when they know that they may never get to see you again. And that is a thing the world doesn't want. They want people to be here. The Samaritans, for anyone listening, by just one example, there are many services out there, as Dom has experienced himself, who will want to talk to. I myself have phoned them before as well for a conversation at 2 a.m. The guy, they didn't, for myself, they didn't try and fix me. They were just there to listen. It was that conversation in the morning, walking down the road at 2 a.m. with your friend. That's what they're there to do. So if you can't speak, if you feel stuck, online, as Dom says, on the phone, reach out to a service and get an ear to let the pressure out from the kettle that is you. And the last thing is, and this is for Dom, who is a fucking awesome individual, by the way, and he's very good at his job. He used to report to me, and he's a legend. But also, if you want to go and watch him, go and check out the rugby for the team he plays. And if you're there, shout, go on, Dom, because he's not just doing the sport. He's doing a passion in a community that he's, that's helping you shine, because you're smiling as I'm talking about it, which is really important. And the last final bit for myself is that no matter how your life goes, sometimes just pause in the best situations and take a mental snapshot in your mind of the one moment you smile, so that next time you have a moment when you feel that you can reflect on the life you had yesterday, not just the moment you're living in. Everybody in this world is worth saving. Every single person is worth the experience of having another tomorrow with a slightly brighter edge to it. And to Dom's point, even if you have to just talk to the person on the checkout about something random to get you to begin to open up, please do. Dom, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And for everyone who's listening, my name is Icarus. This is the After the Fall show. Stay wonderful, you beautiful bastards. Icarus out.